After our initial foray to Manchester, Southport and Preston jazz clubs, presented on YouTube as The Road to Southport Pier, a Jazz Odyssey 2017, we've moved to Cheshire, Merseyside and the Wirral. As I said in the original narration, bands that we didn't mention were errors of omission, not malice of forethought. But on reflection, perhaps we should have mentioned the Blue Lotus Jazz Band, whose members included John Hallam and the late Mick Cook. The Red River Jazzmen, with local drumming hero Dave Berry, amongst other distinguished Mancunian musicians. And the Smoky City Jazz Band, seen here with Bill Smith and Tony West amongst others. As they say, hindsight has 20/20 vision. Chester, founded by the Romans as Diva Victrix in AD 79, and its surrounding area had given birth to many bands. New Orleans Express was the band that banjo-playing Dr. Ron Lloyd co-founded in 1975. He had previously been a member of Liverpool University Jazz Band, the Dave Lynn Jazzmen, and the wondrous Gut Bucket Steam Orchestra. Following Ron's move to Canada in 1977, the band was run by the late Huey Gerard, a fine New Orleans-style trumpeter. Banjoist Jeff Coates wrote a memoir, Going Home, about the band and his time in it. The band folded upon Huey's passing in March 2005. The 18th of January 1954 saw the long-standing Wall City Jazzmen make their debut at the old Clemenson's restaurant in Northgate Street, Chester. Clarinetist Paul Bladen subsequently became leader. Later in the year, local entrepreneur Gordon Vickers asked him if they would be the resident band at his proposed Wall City Jazz Club in Quaintways, in the same street. They agreed, and so 6 months later they opened the new club, which was a success for 20 years until closure and reopening as a nightclub. Fast forward to today, where Gordon Vickers still presents the band at his own hotel on Monday nights, the Mill Hotel and Spa, Milton Street, Chester. Paul Blake continues to lead the band. Jazz at the Mill still has a good following, with some of the old fans mixing with the new and also guests from the hotel. When did you really stop playing, Paul?
The band stopped playing in 1954. The band started playing in Northgate Street in Chester at a restaurant called Clemenson's. Later we moved to Quaintways, where it wasn't going very well. And somebody wrote a letter to a newspaper saying jazz is a terrible, degrading type of music, only played in cellars with bags of smoke and drugs.
Shock horror.
So the following Monday there was a queue around the block to get in. I I started in dance band. And there was a band in Chester called the Al Powell Band, and Sid Lawrence used to play in it and used to do some arranging. So you had to read it those days, obviously.
Yes.
And I played in many of the dance bands, and I run my own band for a while, American Air Force bases.
Okay.
And the social work. I was a member of the sailing club, and I got quite a lot of work through them, you know.
Way to go.
So, up to sort of the age of 30 or so, I was usually making more money from the band than I was at my job.
We just agree we're all on the same tune. 1, 2, 3!
In the latter part of 1948, a group of musicians got together and formed a band called the Wallasey Rhythm Kings. They changed their name to the Mersey-Sippy Jazz Band to reflect the USA roots of the music. Their public debut was on St. Valentine's Day, Monday the 14th of February 1949, at the Grosvenor Ballroom, Wallasey. The band was heavily influenced by the Yerba Buena Jazz Band, a two-horn-led band formed in San Francisco in the American West Coast revivalist movement. Many guests were recorded with the Merseys, including Jan Sutherland and Clinton Ford. Among their claims to fame are opening the Cavern Club at 10 Matthew Street on the 16th of January 1957. A detailed history may be found on their website.
The way I became a member of the band was I was asked to join in 1980 when the trombone player John Parks he retired. He retired from playing jazz. He'd been it since 1957. And we all had day jobs, and I'm sure that's one of the reasons why the band lasted so long, because we never became full-time professionals. So many of the bands of the 1950s soon went out of business when of course the jazz revival sort of faded in the early 60s when rock and roll came along and all that sort of thing. And I started playing the trombone when I was at school. I was 11 years old, through a school brass band. And the school that I went to when I was age 11 had a brass band there. And I started playing the trombone then. I didn't really get into jazz until later. When I was sort of 16, 17 years of age, that was the first jazz band I ever played with. And it was pretty crude stuff because we were all learning our instruments. And it was, you know, it was quite an experience really, because you know, it was pretty much a hit and miss exercise playing jazz for lots of learner musicians like we were. And anyway, but I gained experience through playing in dance bands, and my dad taught me an awful lot about the rudiments of musical chords and things like that, and the way tunes are built on chord sequences.
Who first got interested in trumpet playing by listening to Humphrey Lyttelton at the Picton Hall. That will be about 1949, I think, with his first great band with Wally Fawkes and Keith Christie, and got addicted to jazz then because of the way that Humph played. I can still remember him playing Dallas Blues, not leaving any room for a solo from the piano or having a rest. He just worked at it, and the sweat rolled down his forehead, and it was wonderful. And so I then tried to learn how to play the trumpet, and played it with the university band during the 50s, and later on joined the Mersey-The Jazz Band in 1970 when their lead trumpet player Pete Daniels went to South Africa. And it took me about 7 or 8 years to learn the repertoire because we didn't rehearse. He just gave me a whole load of tapes and said, learn that.
Another long-established Liverpool band is the Blue Magnolia Jazz Orchestra. Founded in 1968, the then 8-piece, a 2-trumpet lead band released EPs, LPs, cassettes and CDs and appeared on numerous television shows. At the Den Bosch Festival in Holland, they won the Band of the Year award, faced by competition from over 100 bands. The band will tell you they are entertainers rather than a serious jazz band, and their repertoire supports this view. They claim that jazz is an entertaining and enjoyable music that can be appreciated by anybody. The band's philosophy is enjoy yourselves.
I've been playing since I was before I became a teenager. I took up the trombone purely by accident. My brother brought the school trombone home one day to learn to try and play it and never took it back again. So when I went to the school a few years later, they wanted their trombone back, and they decided that as the school orchestra didn't have a trombonist, that I would fit the bill. So I sort of stumbled into playing the trombone. I decided quite early on that I didn't want to be an orchestral trombone player, so I started sifting through my dad's record collection and found he had an awful lot of jazz records, and it just sort of took off from there, really. I started reading about jazz and listening to literally thousands of recordings. And by the age of 17, I started playing with a few bands. Unfortunately, work commitments got in the way and I gave up for a few years. And then a chance meeting in a pie shop in West Kirby on the Wirral led me to play with a band called the Wirral Jazz Band. And from there, I gradually started playing more, doing much more depth work, and I eventually turned professional in 2013, and it's been my bread and butter ever since.
Hi, my name is Matthew. I'm 18 years old, just turned 18. I play with the Blue Magnolia Jazz Orchestra. I started playing with them about 3 months ago. I first got into drums when I was about maybe 8 or 9. My dad is a massive Rush fan. therefore Neil Peart is my favourite drummer, despite not being jazz. Part of his live show is to do an extensive drum solo, and after studying with Freddie, I really started getting into jazz and played with the Buddy Rich Memorial Orchestra. And I think seeing that performance really kind of opened my eyes to jazz music. I then got into Dave Brubeck, then into kind of more modern stuff like Weather Report, Snarky Puppy, people like that. But I still have respect for the greats of the art, like Elton Jones, Mel Lewis, you know, all the big names. I love jazz because I think it's the most free and unbridled and untethered form of human expression in music that we've come to so far, and I think the pioneers, the kind of bop era during the 50s, I don't think anything's come close to that since, in terms of pure expression of emotion and the human experience.
Hi. How did I get into jazz in the first place? Well, many years ago, when I was a callow youth, I heard a record on a jukebox which was called Pee Wee Hunt's 12th Street Rag. A friend of mine who was more interested in jazz confided in me. He said, "This isn't the real thing, this is slapstick, this isn't the real thing. Come and listen to my Louis Armstrong Hot 5 and Hot 7 records." And of course I did, and I was converted immediately to traditional jazz. Into the Blue Magnolia Jazz Band. Well, I was already playing with my own band in the St Helens area, and the leader of the Blue Magnolia, Trevor Stent, decided he'd emigrate to France, where he still is, still active in jazz, and I replaced him in the mid-60s, and I've been with them ever since.
And then my brother left the 78 of Louis Armstrong's All-Stars playing Basin Street Blues, and I thought, blimey, this is great jazz. So I went to Dave Carey's swing shop in Streatham and bought the album of rags, book 3, sorry, Winifred Atwell. So I took it to my music teacher, and he said, "Well, you're playing all the right notes, but whether it's right or not, I have no idea." So the next book I bought was the album of blues, and it had Fats Waller solo of Aunt Hager's Blues. So I learned to play this and immediately became famous among all my friends. They all wanted to know about it. Anyway, so then over the years I moved to ragtime and boogie woogie and Brubeck and Shorty Rogers and all sorts of things. And then I didn't play all that much when I was at college, but then when I started work, I thought, well, I lived in a house and there was an old piano, and I can remember saying to this girl, I used to play the piano, and so I moved from this house and bought the piano for 10 quid, and so moved into a house and started to learn to play the piano again. About a few years later I moved to Harrogate, and I couldn't believe the number of musicians that were there. All these brass players, and so it wasn't long before I joined the band, the Jim Wilkes's Anchor Jazz Band, and I played with them for a well, until the band disbanded, and that was great. Well, the pub closed, that was it.
Everybody wants ice cream down at the baby road. It's Pepsi-Cola and Coca-Cola. Now everybody's drinking Coca-Cola. Oh yeah, ice cream used to get. Everybody wants ice cream.
The Chicago Teddy Bears Society Jazz Band originated in Manchester in the 1970s. Their name came from a short-lived American TV sitcom centred around a speakeasy in Prohibition-era Chicago. Fortunately, the band has proved more durable than the TV series and has played for nearly 50 years to audiences across the UK and Europe. Over that period, there have been inevitable changes to the band's personnel. Different musicians have expanded the repertoire to include many styles of jazz, from New Orleans to mainstream, via Dixieland, and on to swing and jump jive. Here we see them at McGull British Legion Club, one of their 3 current residencies.
Teddy Bears, that was it, finished. And I think it was Roy Rogers or somebody of his ilk at that period who was in the band, running the band, who selected the name. It was already established when I joined them. It was just a Chicago Teddy Bears Jazz Band. Shortly after that, we picked up quite a lot of the Cheshire set work.
Yeah.
Tatton Hall, Christmas Ball, things like that, Snowflake Ball and that. So we started to put society in the word, you know, and it seemed to work. It's not been bad for us, in as much as, alright, 1 or 2 others, you've had Chicago Swing Cats and Chicago something else to get that side of it.
That's Jeff Matthews' band.
Yeah, but it works fine for us. It has worked fine for us. And funnily enough, I don't know about yourself, but when I was a youngster, I used to go to Saturday morning cinema. There used to be black and white series of American films coming on, or the Bowery Boys.
Yes.
An actor named Hunts Hall was the lead character. I do remember that. And he's doing a lot of the voices on that cartoon strip, as I found out when I looked at the, as I say, I did find an old clip of it on I don't know, this eBay or something like that. So that's how it came about.
Okay. Blue Lotus Jazz Band.
Yes, that was a band that started while I was still at school, and the shining light in that band was a trombonist called Mickey Cook, sadly no longer with us, but he knew from the word go he was going to go on to greater things, which he did, and finished up with Terry Lightfoot's band and latterly the Alex Welsh band. But we were all just learning, and he had all the records, and we used to go around and rehearse, and he had all the harmonies, he just worked things out, and nobody was embarrassed because we were all terrible together, so it was a great experience, you know, that nobody was laughing when you got it wrong, but eventually you got it right, and it was great times, and we went on to do some nice stuff. Sheila Collier asked me to join the Smoky City Jazz Band, and at that time it was one of the best bands in Manchester, and somebody of my age it was like being asked to play in Duke Ellington's band, and funnily enough, after a year or so I said to her, thanks very much for having me on board in the band, it's a great experience, and she said, well, you're only there till we get somebody better. So anyway, 15 years later I thought, well, I must be doing something right, and actually I stayed with the band 21 years. It's the longest ever been with a band, but we toured Holland and Belgium, and we got to play with lots of people like George Chisholm, Roy Williams, toured with George Melly before he went on the road with the Feet Warmers. We used to do all the Northwest stuff with him. So it was a great experience, and lots of really good memories.
Yeah, that's great, because the first time I met you was about 2:30 in the morning in Den Bosch, throwing pebbles up at the window.
Oh yeah, trying to get in.
Yes, and you very kindly came down and let us all in.
Oh, that's right, it was you. Wonderful.
1960, the Liverpool-based Savoy Jazzmen are still going strong 57 years later. Their leader, bass and sousaphone player Peter Svensson, was almost a founder member, joining 3 months after their formation. Clarinet and alto player Brian Ligan has been with the band for 30 plus years. Drummer John Rothwell and banjoist Mal Horn can both claim 10 years plus service. A residency is the lifeblood of any band, and the Savoy Jazzmen are in their 20th year at Widnes Rugby Union Club, coupled with an afternoon session at Sefton Park Palmhouse, Liverpool, on the first Tuesday of the month.
Well, I'm tired and I'm weary and I'm worn. Through the storm, through the night, take my hand, lead me right. Take my hand, precious Lord, lead me on.
I started playing in the army during my national service, 1958-60, with the Lancashire Fusiliers in Cyprus and Germany. The bass player was a fellow Scouser that used to sing, and when he was singing they wanted somebody to hold the double bass, so I asked him to show me the basic positions, and that was it. When I came out of the army, the Savoy Jazzmen had a brass bass player who was leaving within a matter of weeks actually, so I joined the band sort of August or September 1960. We've tended to look after private work. We've always felt festivals, I don't know, perhaps not well paid, so we do fairly well with local private work, weddings and the like. Not as much now, to be fair, but mercenary, but there was more money in it as far as we were concerned.
When did you start doing the promotions?
Oh, that's probably about 20 years ago. Don't do them now, but I used to. I did about, I think, 33 gigs, and there were always bands out of the area which people didn't normally see, but I'd seen at festivals, so I knew you know, the good bands. For instance, Savannah, you know, I think I've booked them about a dozen times, something like that. I used to do 2 a year, but with no backing. It was a case of lots of friends, and I was not looking for a profit, but as long as we had a good night, and typically we'd get about 80 to 100 people there, we'd have a good night. And there was, generally speaking, we were just in the black, but there was one occasion where I won't mention which band because they were a great band, but in actual fact I ended up £60 out of pocket on that particular night. If it had been my first one, I don't think I'd have bothered again, but that was unusual. And generally speaking, there were, I think, 2 or 3 where we were in there, the others we were, you know, kind of just in pocket. So we had some great nights.
While the whole wide world is waiting for the sunrise, every little rose is heavy, heavy with you, while the thrush on high, his sleepy mate is calling, and my heart is calling you.
Another band with a fun and enjoyment approach is the Parade Jazz Band, who hold down their weekly residency at the Red Lion in Parkgate, Neston. The band was formed in August 1990 and so have completed their first quarter century. Today, the band is led by banjo and guitar player Roy Gregory. A number of leading local musicians have been members of the band at one time or another, including the late Billy Edwards and Dave Renton.
That's the thing to do. Just watch those smoke rings rise in the air. You'll find your memories there. So dream when the day is through. You'll find your dream come true. Things are never as bad as they seem. So dream, dream, dream.
I used to watch the Mersey regularly. Yeah. Blue Mags. Blue Mags I used to watch as well. In fact, I can remember the Blue Mags many from many years ago. So yeah, I mean, I was familiar with those bands. And then right place, right time. Someone was starting a band. I was listening to another band, and there was a band starting, the West Coast Jazz Band. And I joined that, and next thing, Bob Jones, I started playing. And I also got into Django Reinhardt. Around that time, I started listening to that. I now play with my son under the name of Django, and he plays very much like Django Reinhardt. So we play. We do a lot of work together.
What made you start the parade then?
I didn't start it, I inherited it. The parade band has been going for 30 years or so. Originally, it was started by a guy. My memory serves me correct, 'cause I'm going back 30 years and I've had a pint, so. But it was Mike. Can't remember his name, but he had the good sense to get Billy Edwards in on second trumpet as well.
Lovely fella, God rest his soul.
I know. Well, Billy was a founder member of the Parade Jazz Band. I was a founder member. At that time there was Dave Renton on trombone and there was Charlie Walker on bass, and Charlie more or less run the band for all those years. In the end he just got, age takes its toll, doesn't it? And he lived in Liverpool, so in the end he had to give it up. So at that point I was the only founder member apart from Bill.
And to give you an idea, just last Thursday, I think it was, the young blood came over from New Orleans, and they were playing at a place called the Invisible Wind Factory in Liverpool. And they didn't pinch our audience. Which I thought was very good. Thank you, the audience of the Caledonia.
Yes, they were up in Scotland last week.
Yes.
There's Kenny and Vi, and went on to see them.
Right, yeah. And, I've never caught them. I fully intend to. I would have gone to that, but wasn't to be, I'm afraid.
It's often the way, and
that's right.
We went to see the Soul Rebels a couple of years
ago.
Oh right,
yes, I'm not seeing them.
Tremendously exciting.
Yeah.
That's
the speed of the engine.
I suppose it's age showing. I couldn't stand up all night.
What amazes me with those bands is the way it all hangs on the sousaphone.
Yes.
He must have.
It all goes back to Kirk Joseph.
Yeah, but I mean, you're talking about robo chops. Really, I mean, the whole lot hangs. The whole rhythm section hangs on it.
The other ones with the game.
Yeah, well, Kirk
all
Joseph
night on
was
the
the first
sousaphone.
one with the original Dirty Dozen.
Yes, that's right.
And essentially, the easiest way to describe it. Imagine a Fender electric bass guitar.
Yes, put out the sousaphone.
Yeah.
Yes, that's exactly what it is. And certainly when I started Speakeasy Bootleg Band, the idea was to base the concept of the band really on how Alex Welsh's band would probably have evolved by now if Alex hadn't died, and then take it on from there.
Yeah.
And we've done that. It's almost an inversion of a band, in that certainly the trad bands lead from the front line down to the rhythm. We build from the rhythm up, and it's a totally different,
which is
totally different sound.
Happening in New Orleans.
It is.
It's called Caledonia, this one.
Great big feet, she leans tall like it ain't got nothing to eat, but she's my baby, and I love her just the same. Crazy Rabbit woman, Caledonia is her name. Caledonia, 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 Caledonia. What makes you big extra hard? I love her just the same. That woman, Caledonia, is her name.
Tuxedo Jazz Band was formed in 1993 by 6 experienced musicians united in their desire to recreate the sound of the original New Orleans bands. A driving rhythm section demonstrating dynamics is at the heart of the band. The band is completed with a talented 3-piece frontline. They have a weekly residency at the Old Wallaceans Club. An annual event for them is a spirituals concert in Heswall Civic Hall.
In the 50s I was at Manchester University, so it was about 1956, and jazz was the thing then. It was the pop music. My brother had a clarinet, he played classical, and the first band I went to see was in the Art College, All Saints, Manchester, and they didn't have a clarinet, which sort of gave me an idea, but it was a good session, and I got into various jazz bands at the university. I managed to get in a small group in the second year, got my clarinet and bought records and played along with them. Went to my favourite band was the Zenith 6 on Oxford Street, played at the Clarendon Hotel. There was a band called John Hawkins Jazz Band, who were people from the old Metrovic. They were just apprentices. Played with them for about a year. Then the Manchester Panama with Maurice Pike on trumpet. They invited me to play, so we were very busy. We weren't the best band, but we played about 4 nights a week in between bingo. Then I joined the Magnolia. Well, we played every Monday night in Oldham. 4 people from Yorkshire and 2 of us from this side of the Pennines. So I was playing with them, and then in the mid-70s I got a call from Huey Gerard, the New Orleans Express. And as soon as I joined them, I realised this was the music for me.
What made you take up the bass?
Because it was there.
Just lying in the corner?
It was, yes.
Literally?
Literally, yes, yeah.
You inherited it?
No, it was Malcolm's.
Oh, I didn't know Malcolm played bass.
Well, he doesn't, but he's a collector. He has one of everything. At one time he had a set of drums, he's got 2 grand pianos, numerous electric pianos, we've got trombones, trumpets, you name it, it's all there. Bass. In fact, it was one there. I thought I'd have a go.
And why not?
And once you sort of get involved in it, and then somebody says, "Oh, you've got a gig next Friday," so you have to sort of
it focuses the mind.
It does focus the mind, and you keep.
How many bands do you play with on a regular basis?
I think it's about 4.
Mm-hmm.
I play with the Merseys and the Blue Mags.
Yeah.
And the Panama.
Oh, you're in the Panama. John Critchley's orchestra.
John Critchley's orchestra and the Tuxedo. Yep. And then there's the Big Easy once a month, which is the
Terry Perry.
Terry Perry's big band. And anybody else who asks me.
Each night in Bay's room.
love you. You know why. And you don't care for me, dearly. But when I say you find you're sincerely, you know that I need one sweet letter from you. I'd love to read one sweet letter from you.
That concludes our second dip into the world of traditional jazz in the Northwest. Our grateful thanks go to all the band members and the promoters that welcomed us, and as ever, thanks to Fred Burnett's website for guidance. There is one thing that was touched upon by one of the musicians when talking off camera early in the filming, when he stated, "There are enough good musicians in the area to make up 3 bands. But there are at least 10 bands. You'll find this when you see and film the bands with familiar faces on the bandstand." He was right, but nonetheless there is a thriving traditional jazz scene in the area. There are up-and-coming younger players, some of whom we've met and seen. Importantly, they're playing the music.